Hey everyone. So this wasn't a video I was anticipating on making, but I believe that it really must be said. I don't know if you remember, I don't know if you ever knew about the movement called Atheism Plus, which was an outgrowth of mainstream new atheism. Emerged, I think, a few years ago. And it was essentially, we don't believe in God, but also fuck the patriarchy and fat phobia. It was a political movement based around atheism plus modern day social justice understanding. And of course, it was a dumpster fire because you being an atheist and being in that movement, the atheism is secondary to the movement. And the thing about atheism is it's an answer to belief, to a question about belief. Do you believe in a God or gods existing? Yes or no? If no, then you're essentially an atheist. Agnosticism is a matter of knowledge. So if you're agnostic about the existence of a god or gods, you would say, I don't know of the existence of a god or gods. If you ask whether you believe, you would think the answer would be a yes or a no. Now, with agnosticism, and that's why I used to sort of look down on the label. Like, I've gone through various stages of belief and non-belief. I used to look down on the label, but I think it's valid to say you don't know if a God exists. You don't know if you believe God or gods exist, right? You don't know if you believe that. You don't know if you have enough personal experience to believe that. And I think that's pretty valid as well. That's a tangent though. What I was trying to explain with this video is Atheism Plus turned into a dumpster fire because it distracted from what atheism itself was trying to achieve as a movement, I guess. And the same thing is happening to anti-natalism right now. Because I was looking at Reddit yesterday. Like, I often look at it sometimes maybe for content ideas or, I don't know, to interact. But holy fucking shit, like, it is worse than what I imagined it to be. Like, I have used Reddit before, but pretty much as a very casually. I didn't look into communities very deeply, but there's certain communities I really like Ask Historians. They have really good stuff there. But when I started looking into anti-natalism on Reddit, holy fuck. Like, when you type it into the search bar, most of the top posts are people unsubbing from the anti-natalism subreddit. And while their reasons for unsubbing are valid, there's a whole lot of straw manning and just straight up mudslinging they engage in, which is no surprise. You know, natalists are committed to their understanding of the world, right? And anti-natalism itself, as far as I've been in this space, I've seen most people are pretty chill, actually. You know, it's not like they hate a particular group or demographic, right? If they hate somebody or something, they'll hate the behaviors that people carry out. They'll hate that people acquiesce to ruling class sentiments, and they celebrate the fact that they have problems and they have to keep birthing children to solve the problems that they keep having, you know, stuff like that. But there are some elements of antinatalism or people who ascribe to antinatalism that I really believe are only antinatalists out of convenience, out of their own unresolved attempts at engaging in sexual relationships, if I'm being honest, right? Call them incels, right? Incels. The thing about the mindset of an incel, it's everywhere. it doesn't just apply to men. Nowadays, in fact, it applies a lot more to women in some very subtle ways. And what I've noticed about antinatalism is it attracts these very bitter, not bitter, how do I explain it? Very jaded and bitter people, right? Who, because they haven't been able to actualize their own life's dreams or their own expectations in relationships, that it becomes their goal to suppress it in everyone else. Because a common straw man I see, and I'm probably going to make a video about this, a common straw man I see made about antinatalism is that we're all just eugenicists and we just want to annihilate the entire planet or something. And I don't know. I don't know. I honestly don't know. And if you even do a brief reading about antinatalism, it's really nothing. It is an idea that is centered around harm reduction to the extent that you refuse to bring another sentient life form into this harmful reality, right? So if you're operating off of harm reduction to that extent, why the fuck would you want to genocide the whole world, or, I don't know, do eugenics, you know? That's a straw, which is why it's a straw man, right? However, there are people who masquerade in terms of anti-natalism, but really there's other ideologies that they ascribe to, but they use anti-natalism as a conduit for those beliefs. But it's very plain to see it. You know, if a guy hates women, if he hates that he hasn't had as much sex as he thinks he's entitled to, or, you know, then he becomes an antinatalist to say, you know, women are happy now in their 20s, but once they're 40s and they're childless, they'll be crying, or blah, 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 you know, stuff like that. That's not somebody who's a natalist, right? I mean, sorry, that's not somebody who is an antinatalist. Or hold on, maybe I got the points confused. When they say that women are happy in their 20s with no children. No, sorry, that's actually, that's the natalist mindset. Sorry. An antinatalist incel would probably sound more to the point of, I guess, not dehumanizing, but using the kind of language that is very, very, how do I put this? They use a kind of language that is very, it makes you, it's cringe language, right? It makes you kind of squirm. Like, okay, even if you were to believe what the person is saying, the wording that they choose is very deliberate, right? I personally have no problem with calling natalist breeders or spawners, because that's essentially what they do, right? And that's also a topic for another video. There's a lot of things I don't want to expound on right now because I'm going to make videos on them in future. This video is mainly to say that this is the kind of movement that is so prone to being slandered. And entertaining people who, just because they say they're antinatalists, it doesn't mean that they're actually convicted about their beliefs in reducing the harm, in reducing the harm for the next generations, in reducing the harms for the people around us, right? And it's one thing to not want kids for yourself. It's another thing to convince somebody else not to have kids, right? And I personally believe people are going to do what the fuck they're going to do, right? And that's the reason why we're in this situation. If you want to lose your mind and your energy and your fucking, you know, your time trying to to talk people down off of that ledge, or rather talk people down off of throwing their kids off that ledge, that's up to you. I don't see the point. If it's people around me in my circle and they bring up the conversation, I'll just tell them, yo, I'm not having kids, I'm not getting married, and this is why, blah, 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 blah. I think in that sense, in your interpersonal relationships is where antinatalism can have the most effect, right? Because when you do it on a big platform, when you try and mainstream it, the machine galvanizes against you in the worst way. They will look for the worst possible actors in your movement and paint your entire movement as that, right? But I think it's up to us to call the shit out when it needs to be called out, If somebody is saying something like, if somebody is celebrating somebody having miscarriages, right? If they're celebrating something like that, then and they're also claiming to be an antinatalist, tell them you can all do that, but this isn't what antinatalism is. This is sadistic, right? Call out the sadistic behaviors when you see them, because those sadistic behaviors are very telling that somebody is actually in this to watch other people suffer, right? It's really, I feel that I've found quite a lot of, closure in antinatalism. And I guess you could also call it the black pill. Like, the black pill is closure. That's what it is, right? Because you could say the red pill is like the 5 stages of grief, and then the black pill is like the last pill or something. I don't know. You know what I mean, right? The black pill, antinatalism, these are ideologies of closure. And closure is very hard for people, especially in things that they're still invested in, right? They don't even have to be human beings that have died for you to accept that something is very how would I say it? Something is very grief worthy, And when people express such bitterness, they love, even if they themselves are culprits of that very same bitterness, they will expose you, or they'll rather put those negative conversations in the forefront. And just like that, all the traction you made, all the traction you made is really just for nothing, right? If you're here, you're definitely going to be painted as somebody who's somehow selfish or narcissistic, or they will project all kinds of things onto you because of bad actors like this. Like, if somebody's using antinatalism as a cover for their hatred of women or their hatred of other ethnic groups, then it's not antinatalism. It's a disguise, right? That should be obvious. To our end, and most of the people I've met in this space have been really very thoughtful people, right? They're people who actually care a lot about other human beings, to the point where they don't feel that it's necessary to push it onto a child to continue this madness, right? It's these bad acts that I'm talking about that really need to be, you should actually, to figure out if somebody is an antinatalist, it's as simple as asking, how would you feel about the end of the human species, right? How would you feel about the end of the human species? You could call it the extinction, whatever, right? And I think that's another point where people like to slander antinatalism, because I am at this stage, pretty ambivalent about the extermination of humanity. If it's a gradual, you know, the thing is, you can say this kind of stuff, and it's so easy to slander you, even though we're currently doing it to ourselves right now, right? As much as overpopulation, which isn't really a thing, right? Overpopulation isn't it's not an issue. It's one of those code words, right? Because how is it overpopulation is a thing, but then also in Western countries birth rates are declining? So which one is it, right? Is it overpopulation? Is it underpopulation? And if it's overpopulation, which areas of the world are overpopulated, right? To tell if somebody's an anti-natalist, they wouldn't necessarily say that, yeah, they're rooting for the fucking extinction of humanity, right? But they're more so rooting for the extinction of the systems that exploit humanity, that are perpetuated, at least as far as I can see, by other humans, right? I'm open to other interpretations, but antinatalism itself is not something that, you would, the moment you, see, this is the thing I've talked about before, codependency, right? When you're codependent on an ideology and you're fixated on that, somebody bringing up that, the focus of that ideology will always be a trigger point to you, right? If somebody says, "Hey, I'm thinking about having kids" or whatever, your first instinct should not be, "How fucking dare you, you fucking breeder, spawn," blah, blah, blah. Like, that's unhinged. That's not helping anybody, right? If they're asking for your opinion, you could say first and foremost, in my opinion, I probably wouldn't have kids myself, right? But if you want to have them, make sure you treat them like an individual. Make sure they're not going to come out like a carbon copy of you or a puppet for you to mold. They are an individual. And if you can recognize that, hey, I mean, you'll be a lot better off, right? That's the most that you can do. This is not like I said, this is a movement of closure. You don't come here to be bitter. This is not a movement that you come here to be bitter. This is a movement where you come here to accept, to just accept and close on a certain chapter of your life, of human history, whatever it is, right? And in that sense, it shouldn't be an outlet for your hatred. Man, go into a fucking gaming Discord or freaking, I don't know, any chat on Twitter, really, right? You can vent your hatred out in other places. That's fine. But to vent it out here, you don't actually give a shit about this movement, but you probably are more invested in this movement looking bad, right? And at the end of the day, if we're here trying to, like, you imagine if it was only 100 anti-natalists on the planet, but I'm sure there's a lot more. Those are 100 people who are committed to not having children, right? If each of them had like 2 kids, but now they're not going to have any, that's double the amount of people that are not going to have to suffer through this bullshit. And going forward, it's really good. Like, that's why I like. That's why I'll pretty much always leave the comments open. I'm never going to close the comments because, like, it's kind of boring, don't you think? It's like I'm talking to myself in a sense. That's why I really like the open discussions and how people are able to talk in this space, because you can gauge exactly what it is people are looking to get out of life and people's motives, right? So if somebody's new to this movement, you can explain to them what it is, and you can explain to them what it's not, right? And if it's something that they're not comfortable with, they're more than welcome to drop it. It's not necessarily it's consequential to us, yes, but the more you go through life, the more you realize maturity is not something that's very common, right? To be nuanced and to really introspect on why you do the things you do. That's not a very common thing. I mean, would we be in this situation if it was? I don't think so. And you can't really expect people to get on board with your convictions. And because they're your convictions, if they really are. I mean, which are probably also likely to change over time, right? So you should live as you speak, right? You should live as you speak so that even if somebody comes and asks you this and this and this, it's not that you're telling them, oh, you're such a shitty person for, even if you do think that they're a shitty person for bringing more kids into here, right? Your job is, ooh, that's another idea. Your job is basically to lead them into the afterlife of not having to perpetuate misery, if that makes sense. It's not to be an ideologue. I hate fucking ideologues. If you haven't noticed on this channel, I fucking hate ideologues so much. Doesn't matter what spectrum they're on, what ideology they espouse. It's the same tactics with ideologues. Yeah, this was a fucked up rant. Like, I'm pretty sure I went on several tangents, and like, if you actually listen to all this stuff and you actually gain some really good points, like, props to you. Thank you so much. Like, really.